I will call to order the regular Board of Education meeting of June 25th, 2025. Scheduled for 7 PM, now starting at 7:17. And we will begin as we always do with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Secretary, if you could please call the roll.
Sure. Mr. Sunnyberger,
Here.
Mr. Powers,
Here.
Miss Berkmeyer.
Excuse, sorry.
Okay. Mr. Vinatieri,
Here.
Mr. Richards is here, Miss Knox,
Here.
and Mr. Green.
Here. Board, the agenda that you've got in front of you is pretty lengthy. I anticipate we're going to be here for quite a while. We do have 2 closed sessions scheduled tonight, and then for the public's knowledge, if you haven't seen the agenda, I do expect there will be board action taken after the closed session, which for this board is not really traditional. However, some of the stuff we're discussing in those closed sessions requires us to move on them. With that said, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as it has been presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Vinatelli, supported by Ms. Knox. Comments, questions, or concerns?
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
Coming out of closed session from the collective bargaining agreements, and we're gonna be taking votes on those agreements. The way the agenda is written, they're all just kind of grouped together. Are we going to be voting individually, or is it all yes or all no?
So that is the pleasure of the board. I believe we probably want to vote on them individually. Is that correct, Mr. Superintendent?
It's totally the prerogative of the board. A
Pleasure
lot
of the
of,
board, so.
Yeah.
Well, I'm asking because if
basically just as a quick, we'll go through each of the contracts, but like some of them are all Teamsters, so the language is all kind of similar across, and then one is ASME. So you can do it either way you
right,
want.
but if so like there's 5 different groups represented by the Teamsters, right? If a board member was okay with 4 of the 5, is the only position a board member can take is to vote no on all of them? as opposed to
It's,
vote-
you can, whoever makes the motion, I make a motion for these 4, or I make a motion for the 5, so
Okay, do we need to amend that now, or is it just the way we discuss it when it comes up?
you can, the way you discuss when
Okay,
it comes up.
as long, all right, thank you.
And certainly, quite frankly, we can have a discussion as we get to each of the 4 major groups. If the pleasure of the board is to separate out one or all, we'll do that. Okay. Did we approve the agenda? We have not.
We have not. We have motion in a second.
Perfect. Could you call the roll on that, sir?
Sure. Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Miss Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Richards is a yes. Mr. Powers?
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger?
Yes.
Motion carries. Moving on, the agenda that you just approved, item D, superintendent's update. Superintendent Jankowski.
Okay, they're pulling up my presentation. Okay, next slide, please. So just giving you updates on the bond program. You can see the temporary wall came down. This is the engineering wing. So this would actually be the band hallway. You can see to the left of that picture, the band practice room. So that area is now in its final stages, waiting for inspection. Next slide. Also, this is part of the punch list from the addition. This is the hallway down to the auto shop and restaurant. So there was an issue with some tiles that were mismatched because they were a different batch. So they've rectified that. They're working on the finish on the robotics and engineering area. That's still to come. They haven't figured out a total solution yet, but that's on the agenda. Next slide. This is now the new weight room. You can see the wall's been down, and this is where it was, I think, like a week ago. Next slide. And you can see they're putting in the the flooring now for the weight room as that goes forward. So that is also reaching its final stages. Next slide. This is the media center. And so you can see that is kind of in a couple stages of their still doing demolition, but they're also starting to work on the ceiling as they're putting things back and new lighting and everything as we're moving things out more towards the center. Next slide. This is also on the left-hand side. You can see it's another shot of the media center. On the right side, you can see this was approved last year by the board, but now this is the mezzanine level. We had changed the hallway tile. We're doing the same thing. So this is out into kind of the commons area. So now it will match all the way throughout. Next slide. This is one of the science rooms now at Middle School North. You can see new cabinetries going in. The ceiling grid is installed. Next slide. This is the life skills class. So you can see the walls have been installed. Cabinetry is also going in, waiting for appliances. Ceiling grids in. The univent that's on the right-hand side there for heating and cooling has been installed. Next slide. This is also the science lab. This is the instructional side where the classroom is for the life skills as well. Next slide. And you can see this is now would be the northeast corner of what will be the 5th grade hallway. On the left-hand side, you can see when they were doing the demolition to open up those classrooms because we're creating larger classrooms. These classrooms were smaller. They were just over 700 square feet. Now they'll be right around 1,000 square feet. And you can see with those walls have been cleaned up. So now they will go and partition those into larger classrooms so teachers can do center programming and things like that. Next slide. They're also already would be the northwest corner. You can see on the left-hand side, they had the framing in for the hallway lighting. We redid the ceiling grid. And so you can see the new lights there on the right-hand side. Next slide. And then this is the playground area that is being installed. So they're getting ready. This will be the blacktop area. Next slide. You can see the swing sets are already in. So this is over by the bus garage. You can see in the left-hand side there behind the swing set. So all of that is moving forward. It's been tough because we've had a lot of rain in a lot of areas. Next slide. Same thing, walking path that is going in as well. Next slide. And then this is the storage building at South. So it's by the tennis courts. This is the one that was in great disrepair when I first got here. So finally we are going to replace that so that they have someplace safe and secure in order to store everything. Next slide. And you can see the footings have now been poured there. The walls were going up. Next slide. And then this is now Lighthouse. You can see ceiling grids are going in. Next slide. It was a classroom, but now this will be for our ancillary staff. So that they will have offices in the one wing. This will be for the early childhood special education wing, ultimately when it's the early childhood center. Next slide. And this is just more, you can see doorways that are being closed up or moved based on where the walls are at. So that is being done as well. Next slide. And that is where we're at with construction so far. They're making a lot of progress. We had a little setback with the rain when we got like 5 inches of rain in one day. Thankfully at Lighthouse, the one area that we had a problem, because we were already planning to fix it, it's basically a roof drain that we were doing similar to what we did with Great Oaks, if you recall, last year. Thankfully, since we had the furniture moved out, since we had everything else, it was just some carpeting that we're going to have to replace. But otherwise, there was just the sheer amount of water, and that hopefully will be good. The nice thing is Great Oaks, what we did last year, that worked with that. Even the baseball field, which we've had issues, that actually held up very well under that monsoon that we had. So our goal is always to have all the demolition, and then at the older buildings, there's asbestos abatement, have that done by the 4th of July roughly, and then they'll start putting everything together to have it done by August 20th is the hopeful date. Any questions?
I have one quick one, Phil. In the new weight room, the old ROTC room, what are their plans with the old offices that they have there?
Those offices will just be offices for that area.
Okay.
So we're leaving the offices.
All right, thank you.
Okay,
Anybody
thank you.
else? All right, hearing none. Thank you, sir. We'll move on to item E, hearing of the public. Those who wish to address the board on agenda items may complete a brief request stating their name, address, and the subject of their comments. Remarks about specific employees should be directed to them personally and not included in the public forum. Administration will follow up with concerns within 48 hours of the board meeting. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. It appears as though I've got one person who has requested to speak to the board, Christina R.
Tonight, I wanted to share my disappointment that this board granted the continued usage of your schools to Chesterfield Township for voting. I came before this board January 25th, 2023 for a parent volunteer appeal, and this board asked me for transparency and accountability for the safety of all students. Because of the denial, I obtained legal counsel and had my record expunged. I prepared a speech, I practiced it, I wore appropriate attire, and came before this board to plead my case for a second time for a crime I've already paid my dues for 12 years prior. Something that happened far before I became a parent, yet this board was given the discretion to determine what kind of parent I get to be to my special needs daughter. But I came before this board because I understood the gravity of why your bylaws for students, parents, and staff were in place. I respected them, and I came asking for redemption and a second chance. So I'd like to reintroduce myself. My name's Christina Ross, and I am a proud parent advocate to my nonverbal autistic daughter, who's been a student of yours for 3 years. I am the parent who spoke out about the safety concerns during early voting at Sugar Bush Elementary. The issue was handled with zero accountability or transparency from both the township and the school district. The special ed students were used as lab rats to test the clerk housing 9 consecutive days of early voting. That's 300 unvetted residents in and out of that building amongst your most vulnerable student population. Clerk Barry told me to watch the school board's May 28th meeting that supposedly vindicated her of any liability. She said that Phil Jankowski admitted to lying about the matter, so I had to hear this confession. A recap of that meeting and some corrections I felt were worth mentioning. Mason Brzezinski stated it was a matter of ironing out the kinks in regards to issues surrounding Sugar Bush. That statement at the expense of our special needs student safety is deplorable. Anchor Bay's lease agreement stated no voting would happen until the sale of the school in August. Multiple families pulled their children out of schools for early voting. That's upending 7 consecutive school days to special needs students who thrive on routine. Mr. Jankowski, you were asked by another board member, am I to understand that we have children in Sugar Bush that are going to be in the building at the same time as the election? To which you responded, that's the county's program. Those are not our students. That answer is unacceptable. May I remind you that the ECSE students were your students in the building at the time of this took place. Their safety by your own Board of Education bylaws should have been of paramount importance. You all said to me, parents, we hold parents to the same standards as our staff. It is you who sit on this board who then need to lead by example. I asked for answers and I got countless people in leadership passing the buck. My advocacy is far from over. Imagine yourself in my shoes. My child is unable to verbally communicate her needs, wants, or ask for help. My goal here is not to create tension. It is to create and build trust between a fracture that's been fractured in the infancy stages of my daughter's school career. I need to be able to trust you, and accountability is a first step.
Thank you. So the board is aware, Christina did deliver a large packet of documents. So I will have the superintendent's administrative assistant scan them in and get them emailed out to each of you. All right, moving on to item F. a budget presentation. I believe you'll be returning to the podium, Mr. Rathbun. And I am hoping for a little bit shorter presentation than the last one, sir. No, it's the same one?
We talked earlier during the budget hearing about the 25-26. You should have before you in your hands the final 24-25 budget. So that's what we'll be presenting here. And this should be pretty brief. There aren't too many significant changes from what you approved back in January. So again, you'll have a number of columns on yours. Focusing on the third column, this is our final budget that we are proposing for the 24-25 school year. So you can see there, we are proposing total revenues of about $82.6 million.
Mr. Rathbun, can you reference us to the sheet that you're referring to? We have a stack of stuff up here today. Which document are you looking at?
So it's, yeah, it's gonna.
Okay, this one.
Yes,
Okay,
sorry.
got it. That's right. Thank you.
It's gonna have columns, much like the presentation we had earlier.
Got it.
No, more like this.
Oh, that way. All right.
Does that
No, that's not that one.
not have those? I hope.
Hang on. All right, I think this is it.
We have it? Yeah.
The 25-26 original budget. General fund at the top. Original budget.
Should be the 24-25.
I have final.
Final, correct.
24-25 final budget. That is the page, yes?
That is the page. I'm sorry. Yeah.
All right.
24,
You have that to
25
the-
final budget.
Do you have that to display on the screen?
I don't believe we do.
Okay. All right, I
So-
think we're on the same page, sir.
Okay. All right. Let me start again. We're going to focus on that third column, the 24-25 final budget. We've got a few changes that are coming through for that final budget. So we're looking at a final amendment to our revenues, which will total 82.6, almost $82.7 million. For total expenditures, we're looking at about $78 million there. And then we're proposing to have a profit this year of about 3.7. One of the things I'll remind the board is that the sale of Sugar Bush is included in that number. So you're going to have to kind of think about, $2.8 million is included in there for this year. So talking a little bit about variances, that final column, you can see we had a pretty significant variance in our state sources. You can see there an increase of about $1.3 million. That consisted of a number of items that occurred after the board approved the budget in January. So a couple of those items were, we received our 147G money, which was a reimbursement for all employees that were contributing 3% to healthcare. We reimbursed all of those employees for that. And so that was about $673,000. We're going to continue to reimburse them into July. And so that was, unfortunately, we were promised and we're going to see it in October, and then it was November, and then it was December, and then it was finally February or March, I think, before we got it. Same kind of thing happened with 31AA. There's a lot of conversation about that. We received that, I believe, in our May state aid payment. And that was an increase of about $545,000. And then we also received an adjustment later in the year for our prior year adjustment to the special ed. And that's part of that swap that we're starting to do, where we're swapping out federal funds and we're getting state funds in lieu of those federal funds. So that was for last year, we did a partial swap. This year, we're doing a full swap. So we picked up about $385,000. And really, those three things kind of make up that 1.3 variance. For instruction, you can see there, we're looking at a variance of about $796,000. That's an increase. You'll recall me talking about the revenues above. We have that same $673,000 of expense flowing through. So when we reimburse the teachers for that 3%, we get the revenue from the grant, but it's also an expense to us in that grant. So that 796 largely consists of those 147G expenses in the amount of 673,000. So that's the variance there. I'll draw your attention now on some of the supporting services to the pupil transportation. You can see we had a decrease of about 183,000. We thought we were going to be able to get a used bus that we were looking at. It doesn't look like it's going to happen until next year. So we're really kind of pushing that purchase off to next year, adjusting the budget down for this year. And then finally, in the outgoing transfers, so we had a couple of things happen there. You can see that's increasing by about $293,000. So part of that is we talked about earlier, that single line that Congressman Hertel was able to get through for us. We've got about $565,000 in there. And then we also have a decrease, or I'm sorry, we also have a little bit of a increase, I should say, in our electric charging stations. So that was that DTE grant that we talked about earlier that we won't have next year, that we did have this year. So that's kind of what led to those increases there. So this is the budget that we're proposing to the board this evening. You can see there the beginning fund balance is about $14 million. We've got our amount that has been committed by the board for about 2.8, and that leaves us with an unrestricted fund balance of just under $15 million. And so that's the proposed budget for the board this evening. I believe that is an agenda item later for you to approve. Are there any questions? I'd be happy to take any questions from the board.
Todd, is the new bus about $100,000? And then the electric ones are about 300,000? Is that
Electric are closer to about 415.
okay?
And a traditional bus these days, depending, obviously size is an indication of price, but if you're looking at, a larger 77 passenger, they're about 160 now. We've seen dramatic increases in the last 2 years. And that's why a lot of times if we're able to find a bus that's 2 or 3 years old, it's a dramatic price differential. So.
All right. Anyone, any questions before we move on? All right. Hearing none. We move on to the next item on our agenda, energy bond project presentation. I believe that's you again, Mr. Rathbun, and I believe
Yeah,
you've got a colleague to join you.
I'll be presenting. Yeah, I'm having Ron Stimick join us. Ron is with Centrex. He has been here in the state of Michigan again 32 years, working in the energy sector, doing this previously for Johnson Controls. Ron is now with Centrex, and we've had a lot of conversation with Centrex. They're being very aggressive with their pricing, which we appreciate. It's made it very attractive for the district to work with Centrex. And so what I have on the board, and I don't know if you can blow that up a little bit. No? Okay, so I apologize. But you should have a handout in front of you. It looks a lot like this. You've got it? Okay. So on this, a couple things before we get into the presentation itself. I want to make a few statements about caveats here. So these are projected numbers that we're going to talk about. One of the things that we talked about with the board, before any project is approved, we will bid that project out. We will go through, vet all of the vendors. We will bring you what we think is the best deal or the best project for the district. And that will be presented to the board, and you will have the opportunity to determine whether or not we want to do that project or not. So that is that, tonight we're presenting what we think makes sense. But again, we will go out and bid this and bring it back to the board. So I want to make sure that everyone understands that. This presentation is also going to play into one of the resolutions you see later today. And that is the resolution for energy bonds, which comes a little bit later in the program here. But what we've done there is we've done a not to exceed $11 million. So we won't necessarily go out and get that much money, but we wanted to make sure that we had plenty of cushion and that we wouldn't have to come back to the board if it creeps up a couple, if Ram's able to find a couple more projects that make great sense for us, we have that flexibility now to change a little bit. So again, all these numbers are, kind of worked up. Certainly Ron and his team have spent a lot of time going through and trying to work up the numbers. They took audit tours through each of the buildings to count up the number of light fixtures, look at the boilers, look at the condition of the chillers and all those different things. And then they came back to us with a proposal. So what I'm going to share with you tonight, and I apologize that it's not a little bit bigger on the screen for everyone, but I'll just kind of quickly run through all of the projects that we're looking at. And then we'll talk a little bit about how are we going to pay for this? How does an energy bond work? How are we going to pay for this? So some of the projects we're looking at are lighting improvements. You may know at the high school, we've made a lot of lighting improvements. Throughout the district, though, part of those improvements were envisioned in the bond if we were going to touch those areas. By that, I mean construct in those areas. Middle School North being a good one. Phil gave you a slide tonight where you see that entire wing on the, I guess it's the east end of there, I guess, is completely being, or maybe it's north end, being taken down. And so the lamps, the lights that are going in there, that was in the bond because we knew we were going to do that. But on the other side of the building, the sixth grade wing, we didn't have any lighting scheduled for that. So we are now going to be doing more than we had envisioned in the original bond utilizing these funds. And final caveat, and then we'll get into it. So I apologize. You'll remember we had Bart Mallow go through and do an assessment of our facilities. They talked about $280 million as being the number that we needed to address every single thing in the district. We passed a bond for $170 million. So there's a $110 million gap there. We're not going to cover all of that. We're going to come for a portion of that. But what it is allowing us to get to projects that we wouldn't have been able to do previously in the bond. So we're going to also be able to pull a little bit out of the bond. And the reason for that is we know that our bond that we passed is a 10-year bond. Inflation is going up. CPI was 2.3 in the last 12 months. If you multiply that by, 10 years, you're looking at 25% increases. And so we want to make sure that we'll have enough money in the bond to do everything that we promised our public we would do. Okay. So here's some of the projects. So we're talking about lighting, and that lighting would be throughout the district. There will also be some compliance lighting, and this is in case of an emergency. So if the lights, if there's a problem, if there's an emergency, this will come on. And I believe now this is a code requirement, isn't it, Ron? Yes. It is a code requirement. So we will now be in code for all of those areas. We're also looking at some water conservation measures that make a lot of sense. We're looking at some controls that we would implement. And we're also talking about some kitchen utilities. So right now, all of our buildings are metered on the same meter. But what we would do in that situation is we would actually meter our kitchens separately, and then that money would be charged to the food service fund rather than the general fund. So that results in general fund savings. And our food service is very healthy these days because of the everybody eats for free. So it's really going to be able to sustain itself, and it's good for the general fund. We're also going to do quite a bit on boilers and pumps. A lot of our boilers across the district. Again, this is an area where some of the work we're going to do was in the original bond. So we're now pulling that out, freeing up some of that bond money. But we're also doing some additional boilers. I think at Lighthouse, there's 4 boilers, right? And I think we had 2 in the bond originally. With the energy bond, we're going to do all 4. So, well, I take that back. We had to replace one already. So I guess down to 3, but that's the intent. Chillers and pumps. We've got a lot of chillers and pumps that we're going to address. Rooftop units and air handling units. Those are some of the things. And then finally, we've got a few miscellaneous on that second page of your handout. We've got a few miscellaneous things. Those are primarily air conditioning for the technology closets to make sure that with all of the servers and routers and equipment is properly cooled so it doesn't fail under heat. So those at a very high level is what the projects we're looking at. The total right now, and again, this is an estimate. It's a educated estimate, but we're projecting a little over $12 million would be the cost for all of those projects. I'll also draw your attention to those last 2 columns that I have on the handout. You'll see there, we've got an amount for utility savings, annual O&M, which is operation and maintenance. So part of the thought on this, the operations and maintenance, is if we have an old boiler, 25-year-old boiler that's breaking down from time to time and we have to service it, when we put in a new boiler, at least for the first 10 or 15 years, we're probably not going to have to service that. So there's a savings to the district in those operation and maintenance costs. Then the second column, there's that annual utility savings. So if you add those two together, you come up to about $434,000, $434,000, or maybe it's a little more than that. What is it? I'm having a hard time seeing that, Ron.
Yeah, and I didn't bring my glasses either. Uh-oh.
Well,
Oh, somebody's gonna have to help.
yeah, somebody's gonna have to help us. We're both blind here, I guess. But we're looking at savings from those two things, about $434,000, I think is what it is. Or no, I'm sorry. Yeah, 439. So flipping to the second page, what I want to talk about a little bit is, thank you, is in this graphic, and again, I apologize, you can't see the whole thing, but what we've done on this particular graphic is what we're trying to do is we're trying to make the business case to the board here tonight as to why this makes sense. So not only are we going to accomplish some projects that were not in the bond, we're going to be able to pull some of the bond projects out and pay with energy bonds, which will free up some money in the bond. But the dollar amount that we're looking at that you can see on there is about $12.2 million for the entire project. The capital contribution, I'm at the very top. So we're assuming a 20-year loan period, and you'll see that in the resolution later tonight for the energy bonds. We're looking at about a 4% cost in terms of interest on roughly $12 million worth of projects. We plan to fund about $5.8 million of those projects directly out of the bond. But we're going to do about $7 or $8 million worth of bond projects. So what that means is we're going to partially do it from the bond, but we're also partially going to do it from that big number that you see at the bottom. $6.1 million is what we're looking at financing through the energy bond. So that's going to cover part of those projects that were never in the bond. That's also going to cover some additional projects that weren't envisioned in the bond. I'm sorry, I said the same thing, I think. And then, but it's also going to cover some new things that we're doing. And yeah, please.
One important aspect of that is that everything being
Ron.
oh, sorry. An important specific aspect of that is all the scope of work that you're seeing that you know that Todd's talking about here. Each one of those line items generate energy savings, and so that comes back to the general fund. You're spending that money anyway, giving it to DTE or Semco, the utility companies. You're taking that money back from them, and then you're using that savings over time, so it's net neutral to the general fund, not a negative impact with this financing. And that savings is then generated to pay for everything that's being paid for outside of the bond proceeds, the voted bond proceeds. All right, so it's completely a self-funded program from money that you already have from the 2022 bond, because that scope is in that bond. We're pulling that out because it has savings for this program. And then the rest of it's being generated by those other improvement measures that Todd talked about that are not in the bond, that generate what we call low-hanging fruit, stuff that pays for itself quickly. So you could do these other projects and, that still need to be done, even though they're not in the bond. And so it ends up, it's a very financially strong project. It's supported legislatively. All the savings that are generated in it are completely guaranteed by us. If there's a shortfall in the savings, we cut you a check for the difference. All right, so there's an added layer of risk protection for the school district when you fund these type of projects.
So I'm going to walk you through and I'm going to just go in detail as to what Ron just talked about right now. So you can see on that first column, we've got the years. So we're looking at a 20-year bond, and that's why you have 20 years there. You can see in year one, we've got some savings under electrical. So this is the supply, how much electrical you're using. If we have more efficient lights and so forth, we're going to use less energy. There's also what's called a supply charge. So what that has to do with is anytime you hit a peak, you pay that supply charge for the rest of the year. So if we can bring that supply charge down, that's savings to the district. So if you kind of go across natural gas, water, the kitchen, utility monitoring, and if we look at the O&M savings, you come across to that total savings. And again, I think it's about $438,000. So what we're saying is by doing all of these measures, we're going to save $438,000. What we're also saying in the next column is the payments that we would have to make to finance that $6.1 million that I talked about above are going to be $444,000 every single year. Now, those aren't paid out of the bond. Those would be paid out of the general fund. And the idea is if I can save $440,000 in utilities, I can use that $440,000 to pay for all of these projects. Now, the good news is, we're looking at about a 20-year bond, but the actual life or what we think the return on investment will be is about 13 or 14 years is when we'll really see all of that return coming back to the district. So
The only thing,
Yeah.
to add to that is that legally, when you're financing these type of projects on a 20-year basis, the total mean average useful life of all the improvements combined, it's the same thing as like the state bond application process in the state, has to exceed the term of the financing. So the mean average of all the improvement measures that, the useful life of all the improvement measures that we're putting into this specific project is right around 23 years. So it exceeds that number, but it pays for itself in 13.7.
Yeah.
So you're getting another 9 years of supplemental savings back in the general fund after that year 14. Yeah, I mean, coming back, we don't have a payment anymore, and and you're paying for those. All right.
Yeah. So like to give you an example, if you had, let's say a chiller and the useful life on that is 15 years, you can't, spread it over 25 years and pay for that over 25 years. You've got to make sure that you're paying for that in the useful life of that asset. And that's really what Ron was getting at. So, you can see here that essentially we're going to continue to work at these numbers. We're going to continue to refine these numbers. There may be additional savings as we really dig into things. The cost of the project could come down, could go up. We're going to bid every project, but we think this is kind of our best guess as to where we would be. And right now, the project is pretty much self-balancing. So we might have to, in those first couple years, you can see in the column next to the payments where there's $444,000 for the payments, there's a measurement and verification. So like Ron said, these savings, we will come to an agreement and we will sign a contract that says these savings are guaranteed. So if we come to this and we say $438,000 is guaranteed to the district in savings, like Ron said, if they only generate $300,000 worth of savings, they have to write us a check for the difference. And so we'll take that check along with our savings, and that will allow us to make our payments. So, in a lot of respects, this is a great deal because we have guarantees in place and we know that the work will pay off as we're projecting, because if it doesn't, they will make it up. So the long and short is this shouldn't cost the general fund anything. It should be whatever savings we garner from the projects we're doing is going to go to pay for the cost of financing these projects. And that's really how these energy bonds work. Later in the evening, we will have a resolution, like I said, that will come before you. It's for $11 million. I showed you 6 million. We've built in a cap. Financially, we're capable of going to 11 million if we wanted to. But right now, the savings really talk about being able to go out and get about $6.1 million financed without dipping into our general fund. So that's what we're hoping to do. The resolution will come before you tonight. And at this point, I would take any questions that the board has on this presentation.
Could you remind the board, you've planned a 0% increase under your electrical for years 1 through 15?
Pat, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Sorry, you've planned no increase under electrical for years 1 through 15. Can you remind us why that is?
Which one? I'm sorry.
The
Electrical,
electrical cap that we have that for 15 years. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So we signed a deal with Semco for our energy supply, I think 2 years ago. It goes into effect next month. And so what happens is we are capped at 7.5 cents per kilowatt hour. And we'll be capped at that for all of our energy for the next 15 years. After that, it'll start going up again, potentially. But, you know, that's actually hindered the business case for doing this a little bit, because we're getting such a good rate right now that it makes the business case, even though it's strong, it makes it a little less strong because we're getting that guaranteed low rate for the next 15 years. Normally, you would see that utility go up 3 to 4% every year, and maybe more. So the fact that we're flat, they aren't able to show those savings for those years because the utility isn't going up. So the fact that we've got that agreement in place, we'll continue to utilize that agreement, and we will buy our energy at 7.5% or 7.5 cents per kilowatt hour. But we also have, even with that, this is a strong business case to move forward on these projects. The last thing I'm going to leave you with is, the other nice thing about this is we're going to be able to avoid some of the inflationary costs down the road. A lot of this work was not scheduled to happen for 3 or 4 years down the road. By bringing Centrex in and Barton Mallow continuing to do what they do, we're going to be able to accomplish these projects much faster and therefore not be subject to as much inflation. You know, a boiler 4 years from now is going to be a lot more than a boiler today. So we think by accelerating some of these projects with Centrex, we're going to have savings there as well.
Mr. Powers?
You've made several references to this allowing us to pull items out of the 2022 bond and instead use this energy bond. So if we're pulling items out of our 2022 bond and paying for it out of this $11 million bond, what's being done in place of what we're pulling out of the bond that voters approved?
Sure, I'd be happy to address that. So, Mr. Powers, as I discussed, there was a study that was done by Barton Mallow for $280 million is what they said our needs were. We only had a $170 million, I shouldn't say only, $170 million bond is quite a bond. So thanks to the community for that. But it leaves us about 110 million short of what we truly need. So to try and answer your question, there's going to be a couple things that we would do is we will look at what those savings are. And then we have actually worked with Barton Mallow and generated a list of projects that currently are not in the bond, but with these savings, what projects could we do? So we are in the process of identifying specifically, we have a lot of them already. I think about $14 million worth of projects we've identified, but identifying those projects. And then when we have those savings, then we can say, okay, do we want to pull this project into the bond? So we would actually substitute and be able to, one project for another inside of the district.
And the other part of it is it's to give us flexibility, because when we passed the bond, nobody anticipated like inflation being where it's at. We've been good so far, But as that goes on, we want to be able to have breathing room. And the only way we can do that is if we kind of do that ahead of time. Because that could very well be the case. I mean, some things, depending on how tariffs go, depending on how inflation goes, we want to be able to, the first goal, and this is what we shared with them, Centrex and everybody, was we need to guarantee what's we want to do in the bond first and foremost. And so that's part of it. And we want to just stay ahead of kind of inflation and those rising costs. And then at the end, if we do that, and this is part of it, and we have funds that are left over, then we can go back and do more of those other projects in order to kind of make sure that we're tackling as much as we can and just getting the best bang for our buck that we have.
Who's making, like, you know, I mean, I get it. If my last name is Barton or my last name is Mallow, I'd love to get that other 110 million of projects done to get the 280 million that they've identified. Like, what are the checks and balances to make sure that, you know, these projects are necessary?
Basically, the board, everything
Yeah.
goes, as it goes through, everything gets bid out, and then the board approves whether they want the project to happen. So even on this, the board approves the overall plan, but then we bid out each of these items as they go. And the nice part about this, at least, is there's a backstop, and then they will guarantee you are going to see the savings, or they will pay that. And so there's actually with the guarantee, there's less risk than normal, because if we don't see the savings that are going to generate, then they have to kind of backstop that.
And certainly, you know, when we bring that to the board for your approval, you know, we'll have done and vetted those projects and made sure that we believe that they make sense before we bring it to the board. But Phil's right. Ultimately, that will rest with the board. If you guys think it's a bad project, we won't do it.
So we're essentially pulling items out of the bond to finance them through this, and then we're going to do stuff that's above the 170 million scope that
Well-
needs to be done anyways. Is that what you're telling us?
That's part of it. But I would also, like Phil said, echo that part of our concern is when we get to 2030 in the bond, you know, right now, we've kind of priced out what we think a boiler will cost. We've built in a 10% contingency in case it's more than that. But if it's 25% more than we originally budgeted, this, by pulling some of those projects out of the fund, out of the voted bond, we will have a couple $1 million to address projects like that are overrun because they're 10 years down the road and nobody was able to adequately estimate the amount of inflation or tariffs that took place over those 10 years. So it is to potentially do additional projects, but more than that is to build in a little bit of a safeguard so that if the cost of the projects that are in the bond is more than we can afford out of the bond, is more than was budgeted in the bond, now we've got some additional savings to address those items and make sure that we are able to pull off every single project that we promised we would pull off in the bond.
Yeah, I'll give you, like, one example would be steel. Just a lot of we use structural steel. We're in a lot of things, beams, things like that. When we did this, we had no anticipation that there was going to be steel tariffs. So right now, the projection is roughly it's going to add about 5% to the rest of the bond as we do steel. So we need to hedge against that as much as possible. So who knows? I mean, if anybody can predict kind of where tariffs are going to go, that's kind of the big thing, and inflation. But this will just give us the ability in order to kind of see those through. Now, if, you know, everything happens and in a year from now, those tariffs are gone, and as we get into especially the elementary buildings and steel comes down because we can't get it, they don't really make it in the United States. So then it's going to be subject. And then we're running ahead now. That could free up some money that you could do some of those other things. So we could do more boilers. We could do more things like that in order to kind of accomplish those things. And like with everything, we try and just like with the budget, we try and be very conservative. Because like even this, it doesn't have a lot of like the Semco rebates, the other things, because we don't know where those will be at that point. They offer those generally, but there's additional savings. And those savings, I believe, if we get those, they go to the district, correct?
Yep, sure do. Yes.
So we're trying to find the best business case where it's kind of a wash. It gives us the amount of freedom that we have, and then as it goes through, the board gets to pick each project as it comes across.
The only other thing I'll add is this did come in front of the finance committee. And I see Kurt's not here. I know he was out of town today, but, we have a consultant that really is kind of an intermediary between, us and Centrix at this time. And he was in support of it at the finance committee meeting.
Yeah, I think you guys have met Kurt a couple times up here at the podium. He's what they refer to as an owner rep, which basically, yes, he helps us to navigate the projects with Centrix. I've learned so much about energy services contracts. I can't believe it. I had no idea how these things worked until recently. And thanks to Ron and also Kurt on that, because I don't think I could have navigated that without their help.
Is Centrex working with any other school districts within Michigan? And if they are they meeting or exceeding their projections that they've given us here tonight?
Right now, a couple things with that is that Centrix in Michigan and Indiana, we're a nationwide organization, but we just started a subsidiary a year ago here with Centrix. But I've done over 100 projects and $300 million worth of work in Michigan myself. The legislation that supports these efforts, my team wrote with the help of Senator Kuipers out of West Michigan. And so we've got a lot of knowledge. Our whole team that came over is all from Johnson Controls that have been doing this since 1997 with me. It's all my teammates. And so, so from that standpoint, we bring a boatload of experience, but it's more on the individual basis, not necessarily the Centrix name. Okay, to be transparent on that. And so we're looking forward to making you guys a showcase.
So Anchor Bay would be the first school district
Yeah, for Centrix, yes. In Michigan, yes.
in Michigan. Thank
Yeah,
you.
we've got all kinds down in the south, but in Michigan, this is.
So you're working with school districts down south in other
Sorry?
state, you're currently working with other school districts
Yes.
outside of Michigan?
Yes.
And the numbers that you've proposed to them are similar and you're meeting or exceeding those savings as well?
Yeah, every school district's a little bit different, just depending on what improvement measures have been done already and what haven't. So that's hard to answer directly. I mean, but the whole idea is the same.
Okay.
Is that we do these improvements, we generate energy savings, we guarantee those energy savings, and then use that savings out of the general fund to pay for the improvements.
Sure.
And it's all budget neutral, so there's no negative impact to fund equity or your general fund balance, using money you're already spending today just differently.
Okay, thank you.
And Todd, you mentioned our school food fund. There's certain restrictions on what we can spend that money on. We can't raid that fund for anything that's really outside of lunch services or breakfast services, whatever that might be. So
Yep.
The ability to save some money out of that fund is a tremendous value for us. We're not taking out of the general fund.
Right.
We can
You're correct.
charge these costs, and that's why they're broken out separately, the kitchen utilities directly to the kitchen versus the entire building. We can't do anything. We can't break that apart. So it is a savings to the general fund. And quite frankly, how much do we have in our food service fund?
Well, I don't, I'll get you close. I don't know if I know exactly.
It's several $100,000.
Yeah, I think it's, close to $800,000 or $900,000. I think that, we've got about $300,000 that in our spend down plan, that I guess the state of Michigan doesn't require it anymore, but they would like us to do that. So, unfortunately, you're right. We can't use our general fund money, or we could use general fund monies. We can't use food service monies to pay for those improvements, but we can use energy bonds to pay for those improvements. So by using this, we're not really dipping out of the general fund, we're dipping out of energy bonds. And the savings will be about $183,000 in utilities to the general fund that will now be picked up by the food service fund. So
By separating out the utilities.
Yeah, and you know, right now they're continuing to add profit every single year. So they have enough money to pay for those increased costs and it saves it out of the general fund. So that's a huge, I mean, you're talking about 290,000, the payback on that's less than 3 years. So it's a great savings to the general fund.
Any other questions or comments from the board before we move on?
I missed it at the beginning. The gentleman with you, Todd, where is
Yes.
he from?
Go ahead, Ron.
I'm Ron Stimick. I'm from Centrix Partners.
You're from Central. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Anybody else? Thanks, guys. Hearing nothing else, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are of a recurring nature and are voted on as a single item. Any board member may request an item be removed without a vote of the board, and it will be discussed and voted upon individually. Recommended action from administration is that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda, minutes, personnel report, financial reports, and bills payable.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. Powers. Comments, questions, or concerns? I only have one. Traditionally, Mr. Jankowski, and it's been just a little bit since we've mentioned this. The board previously had requested resumes for anyone that's being new hired outside the district. I don't think you guys would object to still getting those as part of your packet. So when we're approving, we can have a look at who we're hiring, kind of where they're coming from, what their background is, what their education is, just to make sure that we're, that we're making the right choice. Again, that's just on new hires, Mr. Superintendent.
Okay.
Anybody else? Comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary, can you call the roll on that, please?
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Powers.
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Richards is yes. Mr. Green,
Yes. Motion carries. Moving on to new business. First item up is the energy bond resolution, which is the presentation that we just had. The energy bond resolution before you tonight will authorize the district to issue up to $11 million in energy bonds. The goal in doing so is really twofold, as you just heard. One, we recognize that the 2022 bond is a 10 to 12-year endeavor, and that the cost of the projects at the passage of the bond continue to get more expensive. By leveraging energy bonds, the district is able to ensure all the projects get accomplished and acts as a hedge against inflation, as the superintendent just mentioned. Secondly, expediting the timeline of these projects will result in a greater utility savings for the district. The energy bonds will be paid almost entirely by the savings generated from the energy savings that result from these upgrades. The recommended action from administration is that the Board of Education approve the energy bond resolution as you have it in front of you. I would entertain a motion to that effect. And I won't be reading the entire resolution because it's about 30 pages. And nobody will survive my voice for that long.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Knox, support by Mr. Sunnyberger. Comments, questions, discussion? I know we just had a lengthy presentation, but if anybody has anything they want to add before we move to a vote.
I did have one question. It's coming up later. It's talking about our plumbing. And so I'm seeing the water conservation and the energy bond and just, I guess, making sure that those two are cohesive. So we're not doing, do you know what I mean? Two things
Yeah.
at the same
Make
time.
sure that, yeah.
Yeah,
you're-
so I don't want to like do new plumbing and also have water and then have to go back and do
Yeah.
double work on things. So to kind of,
And I know
impact-
Courtney's here, she can actually,
I'm
she can
sure
talk.
Corey's already thought of that. So
yeah.
What you guys are gonna be asked to approve later is actually for bottle fill stations. So this is totally separate. That would be it would be flush valves for like your toilets, sinks and things like that, just to adjust the flows of each of those units.
overall, I think this is a very conservative approach, which is classic Todd and Phil. And I see saving money. I think the last 4 years, we've been doing a lot of spending, planning, all of that. And so now I see that you're kind of fine tuning where we spend money, how we get money, how we can offset costs. So I appreciate the energy bond.
Anyone else? Any comments, questions, concerns? Hearing none, since we're about to borrow $11 million, could you please call possibly about to borrow $11 million? Please call the roll, sir.
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger,
Yes.
Mr. Powers.
No.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Richards is no. Mr. Green,
Yes. Motion carries. On to item 2, the Centrix contract. The administration is recommending the approval of the Centrix contract. Centric was the winning bidder of the RFP to provide energy construction services to the district. Centrix has years of experience in the sector and providing a very competitive rate to perform the work. By engaging Centrix, we will be able to accomplish about $6 million in bond projects approved in our 2022 bond application. Centrix will be able to perform many of the upgrades to our lighting, boilers, chillers on an expedited timeframe, which will allow us to save more money in utility costs. These utility savings will impact the general fund bottom line and allow the district to pay for a significant amount of the upgrades from those utility savings. Please note that any projects undertaken by Citrix will be board approved prior to their implementation, as was discussed a little bit ago. The recommended action from administration is that the Board of Education approve the Centrix contract as presented. Do I have a motion to that effect?
Make the motion.
I'll support.
Motion by Mr. Vinatelli, supported by Ms. Knox. Comments, questions, or concerns from the board? Hearing none. Mr. Richards, if you'd be so kind.
Sure. Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
No.
Mr. Richards is a no. Mr. Green,
Yes. Motion carries. Moving on to item number 3, the resolution for the school bond loan fund. The district participates in the school loan revolving fund and every year is required to perform a fiscal analysis to determine if the tax revenues collected from district taxpayers is sufficient to pay the district's bonded debt obligations for the school year. For the 2025-2026 school year, it is anticipated that the district will have excess funds of approximately $2,779,196 that will be used to pay the outstanding balance of the roughly $12,799,949.68 currently held by the school loan revolving fund. The resolution before the board authorizes the payment of the excess tax funds to the school loan revolving fund in satisfaction of a portion of the district's outstanding debt. Recommended action is the Board of Education approve school bond loan fund as presented. Do I have a motion to that effect?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. Vinatelli. Comments, questions, or concerns on this payment? Hearing none. Mr. Richards?
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
Yes.
Richards is yes. Mr. Green,
Yes. Motion carries. Moving on to item 4 under new business. This is the original budget approval for next year's budget, the 2025-26 budget. As we have had a presentation here tonight on that. The rationale is the board will review the proposed revenue and expenditures for the fiscal year 25-26. The recommended action is that the Board of Education approve the original budget for 2025-2026 as it has been presented to you this evening. Do I have a motion to that effect?
I'll make the motion.
Support.
Oh, gotcha.
I think you did. Motion by Mr. Vinatelli, supported by Mr. Powers. Questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none. Mr. Richards?
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. Powers.
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger,
Yes.
Richards is yes. Ms. Knox.
Yes.
Mr. Green.
Yes, the motion carries. We have a budget and we met the deadline. Which is great because the state doesn't seem to be too concerned about getting us accurate numbers, so it's a little bit of a dart toss. Which again, I appreciate how you and Todd conduct that and conservatively look at it, as Ms. Knox already referenced. Next item on the list is the final budget amendments for the current year, 2024, 2025. The enclosed final budget represents proposed amendments for the 2024, 2025 school year. The recommended action is that the Board of Education approve the final budget amendments for 2024 and 2025 as they have been presented to you this evening.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Thank you.
That's close. All right, all right. Motion by Mr. Vanatelli, supported by Mr. Sunnyberger. Comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none. Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
Yes.
Mr. Richards is a yes. Ms. Knox
Yes.
and Mr. Green.
Yes. Motion carries. Moving on to field trips, something other than money. Although a lot of money for parents. Middle School South 8th grade trip to Washington DC with 4 staff and 10 parent chaperones traveling April 3rd through May 2nd of 2026 is the first item up.
Did you say April 3rd?
Yeah, sorry. April 30 through May 2nd of 2026. The recommended action is that the Board of Education approve the Middle School South 8th grade Washington DC field trip on April 30th through May 2nd. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. Sunnyberger. Comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none. Mr. Secretary?
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger,
Yes.
Mr. Powers.
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. Richards is a yes. Mr. Green.
Yes. Motion carries. The other item under field trips is the Cedar Point field trip. Middle School South Cedar Point reward trip with 16 chaperones on May 21st, 2026. Recommended action is that the Board of Education approve the Cedar Point field trip on May 21st, 2026.
I'll motion.
I'll support.
Motion by Mr. Sunnyberger, supported by Mr. Richards. It looks like there's 16 chaperones going on this trip. And I'm gonna guess got to be probably 150 kids. I know
yeah.
we're kind of throwing dart because it's
Yeah, this is the one that's the reward trip, depending on how students are and all of that. So we don't know exactly how many, but I mean, you can basically pass it with that provision of 10 to 1 or something like that.
Yeah, I know. I saw Mr. Latona out there. I think if we run into an issue with chaperones, please make sure it circles back to the board.
Is that something that will be set in stone? Like if we don't have enough chaperones for all the students coming in, is there anything to stop the staff from going ahead anyway, or how do we make?
No, we can come back to the board depending on what we have.
Okay.
Are you volunteering for the trip?
Cedar Point's a lot of fun too, so I'd imagine.
There you go.
Yeah.
So you have another volunteer.
Okay.
Well, we got another chaperone. That's 17.
Yes.
Historically, there are many parents that drive down there separately.
yeah,
and they
meet the
would go
kids
as a
down there.
chaperone if they could.
I certainly did for both of my kids. So,
Sunnyberger's 18.
all right. So hearing no further comments, questions, or concerns, please call the roll on going to Cedar Point.
Mr. Sunnyberger,
Yes.
Richards is a yes. Mr. Powers,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Ms. Knox.
Yes.
Mr. Green.
Yes. Motion carries. Item 7, policy second reading. We're going to be updating policies, 5014, supplement, not supplant. It's Perkins. 6002, safety and security. 6003, firearms and other weapons. 6004, school crisis response and closure. And 8002, Americans with Disabilities Act and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, Section 504. Recommended action is that the Board of Education approve the policy updates as presented. You should have them in your packet, and this is from Miller Johnson, who is our policy law firm and makes these recommendations annually. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Support.
I'm sorry, who was my motion maker? Mr. Powers, supported by Ms. Knox. Comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none. Sir?
Sure. Mr. Powers?
Yes.
Ms. Knox?
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger?
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri?
Yes.
Richards, yes. Mr. Green?
Yes. Motion carries. Moving on to item 8. Award recommendations. This first award recommendation is for district-wide plumbing upgrades. Rationale here is that the Anchor Bay School District accepted bids on June 10th, 2025 for district-wide plumbing upgrades, bottle fill stations. After post-bid interviews, we recommend awarding the contract for district-wide plumbing upgrades to Thumb Heating and Cooling in the amount of $350,410. Although Thumb was the second lowest bidder, they have demonstrated the capacity to complete the project within the required Filter First grant timeline. Thumb Heating and Cooling has the necessary staffing and resources to ensure timely and efficient project completion, aligning with the grant's objectives and compliance requirements. Project is being funded through the Filter First grant. The recommendation is the Board of Education award Thumb Heating and Cooling the district-wide plumbing upgrade contract as stated in the specifications, the amount of $350,410 as presented. Do I have a motion to that effect?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All right, motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. Vinatelli. I have Ms. Wiley at the podium for any questions that you may have of her. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a quick question. So with regards to, it looks like, looks like Eckert Mechanical is the lowest bidder. And what was the determining factor to say like they weren't capable of doing the project as well as Thumb Heating and Cooling was?
So during our post-bid interviews, questions were raised that didn't feel that they could complete the project within the timeline. They were going to use their service technicians as fill-ins to, come when they had time. In addition to, they didn't answer the questions for like the mason work and electrical. I wasn't confident that all of their costs were associated in there. I felt like we would have some change orders coming our way. In talking to Thumb, they have a dedicated service team that will be out here. They felt confident that they would have the project completed by the end of the summer. The specifications we asked for was the end of December. So we are very pleased with them trying to push it through to, for the start of the school year. The grant is a total of $385,000. So it is being completely funded by the grant. Like I said, during post-bid interviews, it was very apparent to us that we thought Thumb would be able to, do it within our timeline without change orders.
Okay, and so you say when they're bringing out service technicians, you mean technicians that were not part of their company that they're sort of contracting out to do the
It
work?
would be technicians that were part of their company, but if they were on service call, so if they didn't have a service call, it seemed like then they would send a service tech our way.
Okay.
So it didn't seem like they were dedicating a certain group of technicians to us. I wasn't confident we would make the timeline by December, let alone the Filter First timeline of June of 2026.
Okay.
We talked about this a couple months ago in building committee, correct?
Mhm.
There, if I remember correctly, there was a portion of this project that was not going to be covered through grants. Have we not got there yet, or is it all going to be covered by grants?
So the first round of funding, it's just for bottle fills.
Okay.
So Eagle has not come out with a second round of funding yet. So the funding for this is strictly bottle fills. What is not included would be the filters for, say, our kitchens.
Okay.
So that's not on here yet, but it's not a requirement yet. So our bottle fills have to be installed by June 30th of 2026.
So that's still coming down the road, the portion
It
that we're
is.
going to have to pay for, and we still don't know what that exact
We would
number is?
not have to pay for it unless it's being funded through the Filter First grant.
Okay.
All right, so you don't have to comply with it unless we're getting funding.
What is the $3,900 ad for LK? What is LK?
So they, Thumb Coast originally bid Oasis filter or bottle fills. What we have currently being installed through the bond is LK.
Okay.
So they had an alternate for an additional $3,900. It just made sense because we've already got LK going in district to keep them all uniform.
That makes sense.
And this grant is a state requirement, if I'm correct, right? The bottle.
This is
filling?
all part of the Filter First. So you have to have one bottle fill per 100 students per building.
Okay, so this is, all right. Okay, so this
Yep.
is the requirement that we.
It is a requirement.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Any other comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none. Mr. Richards?
Sure. Motion, Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
Yes.
Richards, yes, Mr. Green,
Yes. Motion carries. Moving on to item B under award recommendations for a server. A number of technology updates are being made. By the way, thanks, Ms. Wiley. A number of technology updates are being made to the district, including public address upgrades, digital clocks, and emergency alert system. The demands of these technology implementations necessitate the addition of new servers to host the technology applications. The addition of these servers will also provide redundancy and failover to ensure the applications remain running in the event of a server failure. The proposed award has been selected off of the negotiated REMC, the pre-bid list contract, and meets all of the state bid requirements. Administration recommends that the board approve this purchase in the amount of $65,427.03. So the recommendation from administration, again, is that the Board of Education approve the award to McComp TSG for $65,427.03 for the project services. And in your packet, you should have the quote, and I would entertain a motion to that effect.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Ms. Knox,
I'll second.
supported by Mr. Sunnyberger. I have Mr. Rathbun at the podium for any questions, comments, or concerns.
Todd, can you walk us through what the REMC bid process is?
Yeah, REMC is a program that the state of Michigan does for certain technology and supplies and so forth that are utilized by public schools as well as other governmental units across the state of Michigan. And what they do is that they will go out and they'll solicit ideas from what people would like to buy. And then they will take that to the vendors and they will say, you know, we're going to have Chromebooks, for example. Give us your best price on Chromebooks. So they go through that whole vetting process with this supplier. They get the most competitive bids from folks who are willing to bid on those particular items. And it streamlines the process a little bit for schools like us because we can go to the REMC, get a great price, and we know that it's been thoroughly vetted, thoroughly bid, and we're in compliance with the state of Michigan. It allows us to go a little bit faster as opposed to being required to go out and bid it ourselves, which is at least a 6-week process.
Statewide program?
It's a statewide program. Yep. Every school has access to it.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary, could you call the roll on that, please?
Sure. Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Richards, yes. Mr. Green,
Yes. Motion carries. Next up, item 3, the Board of Education moves to a closed session for student discipline pursuant to Open Meetings Act, Section 8B for student discipline. The recommended action of the administration is that we move into closed session for that student discipline. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. Vinatelli. Comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing nothing, could you call the roll, sir?
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
Yes.
Richards, yes. Mr. Green,
Yes, we will move into closed session at 8:37. Board, if you want to take 5 minutes to get a breather, get some air, we will meet in the conference room after that. All right, at this time, I would entertain a motion to come back into open session.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. Vinatelli. Comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary, you can call a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Knox,
Here.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
Yes.
Mr. Richards is yes. Mr. Green,
Yes. Motion carries. Following our closed session, board members, what say you?
There is, in the student discipline matter for student number 08881, the recommended motion is to suspend the student for 30 days, of which 22 days will be held in abeyance pending the completion of 4 conditions. The first condition is the completion of Title IX training provided by CARES. The second is to avoid any cell phone violations for 60 school days. The third is to have a one-on-one meeting with the principal in the building before the beginning of the school year. And the fourth condition is to prepare a statement from the student to be given to the principal at that meeting.
I would like to make a motion to that effect.
I'll second.
All right, motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. Vinatelli. Comments, questions, concerns? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary, could you call a roll call vote, please?
sure. Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
Yes.
Mr. Richards is yes. Mr. Green,
No. Motion carries. On to the next agenda item. The Board of Education moves to a closed session for collective bargaining strategy pursuant to Open Meetings Act, Section 8C. The recommendation is that we do move to closed session. Do I have a motion to that effect?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. Vinatelli. Comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none, please call a roll call vote, sir.
Ms. Knox, Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
Yes.
Richards, yes. Mr. Green,
Yes. Motion carries. We are back into closed session at 9:53.
thanks, Adam.
All right, at this time, I would entertain a motion to go back into open session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. Vinatelli. Comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none. Please call the roll, sir.
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger,
Yes.
Mr. Powers.
Yes.
Richards, yes. Mr. Green,
Yes, motion carries. We are back into open session at 11:32 PM. That's what I said, 11:32. Appreciate those of you that are still with us. Let's continue on back down our agenda with the first item after the closed session. Item 1 is administrator contract extensions. The following administrators are being presented for contract extension as an Anchor Bay School District Administrator through June 30, 2027. The recommended action is that the Board of Education approve the administrator contracts through June 30, 2027 as presented. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion from Ms. Knox, seconded by Mr. Vinatelli. Comments or questions, concerns? All right, hearing none. Call a roll call vote, sir.
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
I'm sorry, we're just voting on doing the voting, correct? We're not,
We are reviewing the item one, the administrator contract extensions, and approving all of the contract extensions for those folks listed in that motion that should be attached for you.
They're individual.
Individual contracts.
okay, we're not on number 2 yet, my bad.
We are not on number 2, sir.
Yes.
here, yes.
Yeah. he said
Yes.
Richards, yes. Mr. Green,
Yes, motion carries. Moving on to item 2. We are going to handle all of these contracts individually. I'm sorry, all of these TAs, tentative agreements individually. So I will start with item 2 is the Teamsters. So first up is the approval of the Teamsters tentative agreement as has been presented to you for the directors group. Do I have a motion to approve that tentative agreement for the directors group?
I will make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. Vinatelli. Comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none. Mr. Secretary, could you call the roll for the directors, please?
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
No.
Mr. Richards is a yes. Mr. Green,
Yes. Motion carries. That approves the tentative agreement with the directors. We're going to move on to the next Teamster group, which is the coordinators and supervisors. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve their tentative agreement as has been presented to you.
I'll make the motion.
I will second.
Motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. Vinatelli. Comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none, could you call the roll for the coordinators and supervisors tentative agreement, please?
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger,
Yes.
Mr. Powers.
Yes.
Richards, yes. Mr. Green,
Yes. Motion carries. Moving on with the Teamsters to item C is the building administrators. I will entertain a motion at this time to approve the building administrator's tentative agreement as has been presented.
I'll make the motion.
I will second.
Motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. Vinatelli. Comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary, if you'd be so kind.
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
Yes.
Richards, yes. Mr. Green,
Yes. Motion carries. Moving on again with the Teamsters to item D is our central support staff. I would entertain a motion to approve their tentative agreement as it has been presented to you tonight.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. Vinatelli. Questions, comments, or concerns? Ooh. Unaffiliated. So, I recant my statement about Teamsters. However, that doesn't change that we can vote at this point on. No, I appreciate that. They ended up on my list under Teamsters, so. That's okay. So I have a motion and a support. Any other comments, questions, or concerns? Mr. Secretary, if you wouldn't mind, I think you pretty much know what you're doing by now.
Yes, yes, yes. Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
Yes.
Richards, yes, Mr. Green.
Yes, motion carries. Moving on, item E. Under the Teamsters is our office managers and secretaries. I would entertain a motion at this time to approve their tentative agreement as has been presented to you tonight.
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. Vinatelli. Comments, questions, or concerns? Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger,
Yes.
Mr. Powers.
Yes.
Richards, yes, Mr. Green.
Yes. All right, we'll move on to the AFSMI group. Unless somebody has an objection, I am planning on doing the AFSMI group as one approval for the custodians, the bus drivers, and the food service. So the recommended action is to approve the tentative agreements as have been presented in front of you tonight for the custodians, the bus drivers, and food service. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion by Powers, supported by Vinatelli. Questions, comments, or concerns about that group? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Powers,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger,
Yes.
Richards, yes, Mr. Green,
Yes.
and Ms. Knox.
Yes.
Sorry.
All right, we're going to move on to the non-affiliated group. I am going to separate out those. I guess it's 3 groups, including the superintendent. The first group in the non-affiliated category is our technology group. At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve their tentative agreement as presented.
I'll make the motion.
I will second.
Motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. Vinatelli. Comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none. Mr. Secretary, please.
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger,
Yes.
Mr. Powers.
Yes.
Richards, yes, Mr. Green.
Yes. Motion carries on the technology agreement. I move on to item B and seek a motion to approve the assistant superintendent's contract tentative agreement as it has been presented to you this evening.
I'll motion.
I'll support.
Motion by Mr. Sunnyberger, supported by Ms. Knox. Comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none, Mr. Richards?
Mr. Sunnyberger,
Yes.
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Richards, yes, Mr. Green.
Yes. Motion carries. Item C is the superintendent contract adjustment. Per MCL 380.1249B, the contract governing the employment of a school district superintendent or intermediate superintendent must include an appeal process concerning the evaluation process and rating received. This subdivision applies to a contract that is entered into, extended, renewed, or modified on or after the effective date of the amendatory act that added this sentence. That's a mouthful. Accordingly, the recommendation is to add language to the superintendent's already approved contract extension that the superintendent may appeal any evaluation rating less than an effective rating by notifying the board president in writing within 30 calendar days after being informed of the evaluation rating. The appeal will be handled according to the process current arbitration clause of the superintendent's contract. The recommended action is that the Board of Education approve the superintendent's evaluation appeal process as presented. I will entertain a motion to that effect.
I'll make the motion.
I will second.
Motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. Vinatelli. Questions, comments, or concerns? Mr. Secretary, if you'd be so kind.
Hold on 1 second. All right, Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
Yes.
Richards, yes. Mr. Green,
Yes. Motion carries. On to item 2, under the superintendent contract adjustment. According to Public Acts 224 and 225 of 2023, beginning in the fall of 2024, effectiveness ratings options have changed. Through June 30, 2024, there were 4 categories: ineffective, minimally effective, effective, and highly effective. Subsequently, those categories have changed to 3: needing support, developing, and effective. At the most recent evaluation meeting, the superintendent earned 100% of the available points on his evaluation. Therefore, he would have been awarded his contractual performance bonus of 2% under the system that was in place at the time his contract was adopted. As discussed at that meeting, the board would adjust the contract to the new evaluation requirements when making the annual contract adjustments to comply with new state laws, state pension requirements, etc. This proposal is to revise the bonus language for this year and subsequent years, which is currently 1% for effective, 2% for highly effective, instead changing it to 2% for effective, as that is now the highest level that the superintendent can obtain. The recommended action is the Board of Education approve the superintendent evaluation bonus adjustment. At this time, I would entertain a motion to that effect.
I'll make the motion.
I'll support.
Motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. Vinatelli. Comments, questions, or concerns about this change? Hearing none. Mr. Secretary, if you wouldn't mind calling the roll.
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatelli,
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
Yes.
Richards, yes. Mr. Green,
Yes. Motion carries. Moving on to item 5, ABEA proposed letters of agreement. Attached are 2 letters of agreements between the ABEA/MEA and the district. They're largely a result of the middle school reconfiguration. The first deals with ensuring educational supervision of recess/lunch and assuring our teachers meet their contractually obligated release time. The second LOA speaks to 7th and 8th grade sports and ensures that coaching staffs are sufficient to meet possible increased number of student athletes. The recommendation is that the Board of Education approve the LOAs between the ABA/MEA and the district as presented to you this evening. I would entertain a motion to that effect.
I'll make the motion.
I'll support.
Motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. Vinatelli. Comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatelli,
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger,
Yes.
Ms. Powers,
Yes.
Richards, yes. Green,
Yes, motion carries. Item 6, New Baltimore Police Contract. The City of New Baltimore will provide a school resource officer full-time for 8 hours a day for 180 days. Please refer to the attached agreement in your packet with the New Baltimore Police and the Anchor Bay School District. The recommended action is the Board of Education approve the agreement with the New Baltimore Police for school years 25-26, 26-27, 27-28, and 28-29. I would entertain a motion to that effect.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. Vinatelli. Questions, comments, or concerns? I see Mr. Rathbun making his way to the podium.
and the man is
Sir.
there.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring to the board's attention, we talked about this a little bit in the finance committee. And there were a couple points that were asked before we brought the contract to the board. So I believe it's in clause number 2 or provision number 2 of that contract. The 2 items that I think were brought up during the finance committee that we were asked to address before presenting this to the board was, 1, if the officer is not able to be there for some reason, that we would prorate the contract for that day when they're not able to be here. We have successfully added that to the second clause there. And then the other item that was an import to the finance committee was that we would have consistency of that SRO, meaning there was some concern about the shifts and how long they work and whether they would be there the full week. We have also modified the language to make sure that the SRO is the same person that will be reporting on a daily basis. So it won't be a situation where, you know, if I'm working a 12-hour shift or something like that, and I get all my hours in by Wednesday, that I'm not there on Thursday and I'm not there on Friday. These are 8-hour shifts, and it will be the same SRO that's reporting there.
Anything else, Mr. Pate?
That's all I wanted to share, just that we had addressed those concerns.
So those were definitely two concerns that we had at finance. I will only tell the board that this is pretty much in line with a review of St. Clair County as well as Chesterfield, which we did look at the finance committee as well. And actually, I think probably shouldn't say it out loud in case the chief's watching in New Baltimore, but I think it's actually less money than what we pay Chesterfield. So this has been something that has been a long time coming. And I am glad to see that Todd and Amanda were able to work it out with Chief Blackburn over in New Baltimore to give us this full-time officer to service Lighthouse, Middle School North, and Ashley. Anybody other comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none, sir. Move to a roll call on that.
Ms. Knox.
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri.
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger.
Yes.
Mr. Powers.
Yes.
Richards, yes. Mr. Green.
Yes. Motion carries. Congratulations, guys. I really appreciate the hard work you put into that.
Yeah,
It's been
a lot,
6-7 years coming that we
a
wanted.
lot of credit to Chief Blackburn as well. He was instrumental in getting this done as quickly as we did.
That's great. Moving on to item 7, retirement resolution. The resolution before the board this evening is to address the result of a recent court settlement by the Michigan Public Employees Office of Retirement Services, also known as ORS, related to the Batista case. That case dealt with how ORS was calculating final average compensation for employees that had a derelictus. Wow, that's a big word. It's too late for that. I'm skipping it. Effect on employee retirement payment amounts. The underlying issue in the case was that ORS was concerned that districts were artificially inflating administrator salaries in their final years of service for the sole reason of inflating those administrators' pensions amount. In the settlement, it was suggested that boards should pass a resolution indicating that increases in the salary awarded were not for the sole purpose of spiking an employee's salary so that they will receive a higher pension amount in retirement. Administration is recommending passage of this resolution indicating that the board has not provided increased compensation to employees to purposely and possibly artificially increase their retirement compensation amounts. Recommended action is that the board approve the retirement non-spiking resolution. I would entertain a motion to that effect.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Knox, supported by Vendatelli. Comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none. Mr. Richards?
Ms. Knox.
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri.
Yes.
Mr. Sunnyberger.
Yes.
Mr. Powers.
Yes.
Richards, yes. Mr. Green.
Yes. Motion carries. Moving on to other items of discussion. Let's get started with points of pride, and we will start with Mr. Sunnyberger.
I was dismayed today when I saw the social media post about Fortis. It's terrible on so many levels. First of all, just the obvious stuff. If you don't know, the post was that two more board members voted to get rid of Fortis. Completely untrue. Obviously, 2 board members by themselves can't do anything. Second of all, this has not been up at a meeting at all. Going beyond that, every single one of our
reputations was at stake at the social media post? Because who are those two people that voted no? We have no idea. Second of all, Fortis, if they're telling somebody, the person who made the post said, I called Fortis. If Fortis is telling people, two people voted no, I mean, that puts Fortis's reputation on the line too. Social media is, you have to be really careful because that did a lot of damage and it put a negative light on our district and that really irritates me. So that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Powers.
We lost one of our students this past week, and I've been thinking about that family a lot. I don't know them personally, but they've been in my mind a lot this week, and just want to offer my condolences to them, and I hope they have people around them that can help them through this, and I hope that they're able to find peace in their life at some point. And it's just sad that anytime we lose one of our students, and I hope they're doing okay. Just been thinking about them a lot. Thank you.
Nothing, Mr. Vinatelli. Ms. Knox?
To speak to what Mr. Sonnenberger said, and then to play on what Mr. Powers said, is we're trying to teach our children to use social media responsibly, and we are not doing it ourselves. We're getting rumors out of control. Anchor Bay, there was false information out at least twice, if not more times this week. Just go directly to the source, email or call a board member, call the superintendent and just say, hey, did this happen? If it happened, we're going to tell you because we had to do it here publicly, so it's not a secret. And if it didn't happen, we'll tell you it didn't happen, and things can get cleared up much quicker that way. That's it.
Mr. Richards? That is a lie.
All right. I'd like to say congratulations to the class of 2025 and good luck on your future endeavors. Anchor Bay is still hiring for SAC and GSRP programs. If you're interested, please reach out to HR. I'd like to recognize the Lighthouse Student Council as part of their community service project. They use funds to plant flowers at the New Baltimore Police Station as well as the New Baltimore Fire Station. Congratulations to the high school patient care technician class. All 12 students that took the certification class passed and are now certified patient care technicians. The kindergarten bus safety event is, I know, can't believe I'm going to say this, August 12th for Lottie Naldrit McCons. On Wednesday, the 13th, Great Oaks Lighthouse in Ashley. Not trying to fast forward summer. Anchor Bay Summer Basketball Camp is July 28th through the 31st for children ages 7 through 14. To sign up, please reach out to Mr. Selesky. If you haven't already heard, middle school North starts at 8 a.m. next year and middle school South starts at 8:20. Congratulations to junior Kelsey Cole, who is part of our advanced graphic design class. Her image was chosen by the Chesterfield Township Veterans Home and was placed on their van. Great work. Huge congratulations to Ava Sisma, a third grader, Miss Thompson's class at McCons. She was the only student with perfect attendance. Boys and girls tennis camp is July 7th through the 10th for grades 1 through 12. If interested, reach out to Darren Weir. Congratulations to Tyler F. and Isaiah D. on being selected to the high school baseball all-star game at Comerica Park. I'd like to recognize the Anchor Bay Fishing Club that raised funds to sponsor Great Oaks and Lottie Elementary School. They'll be getting the Michigan United Conservation Club Tracks magazines. I'd like to thank the high school assistant principals, high school principal, as well as Mr. Teedy, Mr. Latona, and Mr. Selesky, who participated in our last policy meeting. We were able to talk about plans to make our district-wide cell phone ban a success. Thank you for your time. Also, due to staff survey feedback, I did request backpack usage be added to the next policy meeting so we can discuss what the next steps are with backpacks. Thank you very much and enjoy your summer.
So I'll start with actually probably an apology to my fellow board members. I actually had the intention of having a moment of silence for our lost student. So even though it is much later in the night than when we sat down at this table, I would still request a moment of silence for that student, if you would all join me. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I can't imagine what the family is going through. So my thoughts and prayers are with the family and friends of that student. And as well, want to call attention to the resources that the district has available for, for the community as a whole, for our students and for our staff that knew this individual. And that I believe that we have Sherry's kind of heading up that, Sherry Kenward heading up any type of concerns that anyone may have or needs to reach out for help. Please reach out to Sherry Kenward at the high school. I know, no one's there per se, but you can get to her voicemail and leave her a number, and she can get back to you with resources and support. Because I know this is equally as hard for our staff as it is for students. So I appreciate that moment of silence. On a little more positive note, I need to give a shout out to Corey Wiley and Superintendent Jankowski. The Bayrama Festival was in the park downtown New Baltimore over the weekend. And we had a flood out essentially. I'm sure some of you saw the pictures of the water flowing down the stairs like it was a whitewater rafting trip. Flooded the park, and Superintendent Jankowski and Corey Wiley put together fairly quickly, when I say quickly, within an hour, a team that was able to let the Bayrama folks into Middle School North, and they were able to conduct their pageant there in the Commons. So that is greatly appreciated, and as well as Mr. Teedy, who suddenly showed up on scene to offer his help as well. So that was awesome. I think that is the type of partnership that I'm looking for out of my superintendent and my directors, where they are, if we're able to help in a situation like that we can jump to action that quickly. And I know it was already mentioned that we had some flooding, I think, in Lighthouse. Corey and her team was already there and pulled themselves away from there to make sure that Middle School North was ready to go. And the Bayrama committee sends their greatest appreciation to you and to Corey. Let's move on to legislative update.
Legislative update, as has been the case for, I don't know, most of the last year, not much is going on. Just for comparison, if you were to take the first 6 months of last session when it first started, there were 119 public acts that were passed by that time. So far, 5. One of which, the only one that pertains to school, was the snow day forgiveness for those that were up north in the ice storms. The big thing is, and I should check, yes, there is a slight chance that today is the last session day before July 1st, which is their statutory deadline that they self-impose to have the budget set. So it might happen, but I doubt it will. We're looking at, it's probably going to be September or October, because they are out, I believe, all of July. They will not be back until August. So that's it.
Committee updates. I know we talked a little bit about Finance Committee meeting and reviewing all of those contracts that were approved tonight. So I appreciate that. It was quite a lengthy meeting. And then the Executive Committee met with Superintendent Jankowski to review the contract changes that we legally were obligated to make or were recommended, as well as everything else that came in front of the board tonight. Does anybody else have a committee update that they might want to share? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Comments, questions, or concerns? All those in favor of going home signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. 12:01.